Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. We have grown accustomed to learning of inventors and mad scientists that have suddenly become suicidal, who have lost their labs to random accidents of arson, have been threatened into silence, or have been co-opted into the military-industrial complex. My bad. Technical difficulties. All right. Who have been threatened into silence or have been co-opted into the military-industrial complex's more shady sides of black ops projects. But perhaps one of the earliest mad scientists to mostly escape these traps, at least for a time, was our main man, Nikolai Tesla. Tesla is an oft-looked-to bastion of free energy ideals and fair play in technological development, and maybe one of his best characteristics, while being the least focused upon, was that he did not murder a single elephant to accomplish his benevolent goals of lasting renewable energy for all. But before I introduce my panel tonight to talk about Tesla and all of the good things he did, I wanted to remind you guys listening out there that you can find Rogueways on any podcast app if you like to listen along, or on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces. And also Rogueways is now part of the Eyes Open Network. This collective of creators comprised of myself, Benjamin Balderson of Odin's Alchemy, Claude Furry of Talking Nonsense, and Steve Poikinen of Slow News Day. These incredible creators will get together at least once a month to perform wacky antics, talk topical, wax philosophical, and create nearly illegal amounts of fun. This content will only be provided to Patreon members of Rogueways, so go to www.patreon.com/rogueways right now to subscribe. And we're doing our first roundtable this Saturday, so that content will be available to subscribers hopefully by Sunday. So for our guest tonight, we've got Alan Cisco. Alan is a longtime student and teacher of the many mysteries of life and all of the love and hardship that comes with it. Alan delves deeply into the metaphysical mysteries and shares with an open heart with those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. A badass warrior and one of the most intelligent people I've had the luxury of knowing on this trip through life. Alan, how's it going tonight?
It's going very well. Thank you so much.
And we can add that Alan just jumped into this show like 10 minutes ago, so he's our savior tonight. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
And next we also have joining us my lifelong friend, a woman with no titles but more credentials in her bag of experience than most who would claim them, a wanderer through synchronicity and mystery, a weaver of the etheric on this physical plane, and a badass warrior of light. Harmony, welcome once again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I have to live up to your titles once more.
People say that. It's all true, though. It's easy to live up to when it's already true. So we've got the pointless question of the episode today, which is brought by this idea that maybe the magnetic poles seem to be wandering a little bit. And then people often think about global climate change and if we're going to suddenly go into an ice age, and with all the snow that's been covering the north, at least United States recently, maybe that seems more apparent. Or we always hear about the threat of super volcanoes under Yellowstone. So I'm just wondering, if any of those things happen, what are your guys' plans?
Well.
Uh-oh. We've got some freezing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Pole shift, like if you look at how the poles have been shifting, literally it was 20 years ago and continues to shift. I think something catastrophic happens momentarily. Like we don't have much planning that we can do, and you basically have to rely on your survival skills and kind of what you already know and what you already have, and a lot of people kind of jump on the bandwagon to become very commercialized and supply. Really, if your house gets knocked out, not at where your supplies are during an emergency, it doesn't matter how much you prepared if you're not prepared up here. And the emergency depends on where you're really going to end up and how you're going to perceive the experience anyway. That's how I kind of play on that question.
You're cutting out a lot and we're having some difficulty hearing you. I don't know if you have any other apps that are running internet related things, but closing those might help, and we'll see if it clears up a little bit. But I got most of what you were saying.
Okay.
Most of what you're saying came through, I think, the gist of it at least. What do you think about it, Alan?
Well, being, going to turn half a century this year, am I coming through, or is my voice actually cutting out also?
I can hear you fine. I think it's good.
Okay, I'm just hearing a little weird feedback on my end. What I was going to say is, when I was younger, I got to watch the blizzard of '78, and then another blizzard of in the '80s when I was in my teens, and everything was shut down for almost a week or so. And the weather was bad enough that my father went out with the National Guard to pull people's bodies out of the ditches. And so I've seen the weather bad enough, at least my time in Little Old, Ohio, that you had bodies everywhere, and many great. Are you still getting that feedback on your end?
I am starting to hear it now. Do you have YouTube open or something else that would be like playing it back? No, we're just like plagued with problems tonight. We have two people not show up for the show, but Alan came through at the last minute, and now we're like having difficulties with our technology. But I was hearing most of what you said. There's just that little bit of feedback.
Yeah, and I guess it's also, as what Harmony said, it's a little reflective on where you live, what you're used to, because then when I moved to Alaska, the first big snow, I had to open my door, of course, inward, because they build them that way, and shovel from my sidewalk to my car just to get through the couple feet. But
wow.
When I shoveled a path around my car so I could get going, everybody else was out driving around, including the school buses. But then I came back to Ohio, and we have 3 inches, and people act like it's the snowpocalypse.
Yes.
So it's really what you're used to. Plus, if you live in spots like the literal North Pole village or city town, you're used to the literal town hell freezing over and many things like that. And you have the various islands that are flooding now, and the citizens that have lived there for a number of years are having to completely move their whole villages. And I think the earth, just like everything, goes through cycles. To me, it's like, okay, it's no big deal. I don't really get bent out of shape with the whole Al Gore take on things. It just, whenever I hear clarion call of the world's going to end, it's like, okay, again,
Yeah.
because I guess I just grew up through the 70s and 80s with the various, and I guess this is crossing genres, the religious channels of the apocalypse is just around the bend, and I just got a constant dose of that all the time. So no matter what genre I hear it in, it just doesn't faze me, really.
Yeah.
Even coming from scientists, because 1 minute things could be fine, then the next minute it's like, whoa, there's going to be a sunspot that's going to wipe everything out. Okay, well,
Well, and I feel like science is the newest religion, so it's just another version of that apocalyptic doom. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I feel like you're going to be as ready as you can be wherever you're at, and you're never going to be able to know when something might hit and what you're going to have with you. You might be out driving, you might be sleeping at night, or you might be like on vacation in Tahiti. So you just got to do your best, I guess, and roll with it. But I find it interesting, the fear that people are able to bring to things like this. And I feel like it's obviously very like pumped up and manufactured by the media. This last round of snow that we got in Washington, I went to the store on the night before some snow was supposed to come. And literally, like, I think the maximum at that point was like 4 inches was forecast, and people were going insane. Like the shelves were empty and there was lines out the back. And I was just like, what? And I didn't even know it was supposed to snow. I was just like, what's happening? Like, they're like, oh,
Right.
the snow. And I'm like, what? Is it that bad? Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, I mean, you want to have some food in your house for like if the power goes out for a few days or whatever, but it was just kind of crazy. Like that level of fear that can just be like switched on, I think is more dangerous than whatever the event itself could be.
Well, and then also people act like if a couple inches are going to come, that they're going to be stuck indoors for so long that they're going to have to start drawing lots to see who gets eaten.
Yeah.
Like, like really, there was a meme going around where they were measuring where the snow was going to be in Ohio with the amount, like the number of loaves and gallons of milk you're supposed to get.
They're like 2 inches equals 2 gallons, folks.
Right. Yeah, this is going to be a 4-loaf fall. It's ridiculous.
They're like telling
yeah,
you.
it makes you wonder.
Yeah.
If the weatherman is in cahoots with the marketing commercial industry.
Dairy farms.
Oh, sure.
Oh, God. All right. Well, Nikola Tesla probably lived in a time where that was not necessarily the case. They definitely didn't have the mass ability to just turn on people's fear and send people flocking to the store to stock up on things. So let's start with what we know of Nikola Tesla's background before kind of he got big or did anything amazing. Like, what do you guys know about where he came from and what his earlier life might have been like?
Well, I know he spent a lot of time alone. That was one of his great things that he thought was his downfall. And then he realized upon pondering that was one of the things that brought him to some of his greatest moments and his greatest revelations and inventions. And he was born in Croatia to an Orthodox priest. And he was the fourth of 5 kids. And it's said that he was born during a lightning storm. And he really loved to read. And he was very introspective. And at 17, he prepared for, and in seminary, against his will, his father wanted him to join the cloth, I guess you would say. And he came down with cholera because he was so distraught, and I guess he didn't know how to deal with being forced against his will to do that. And he explained that's how he kind of contracted cholera. And then he said by miracle he was cured, and his father consented to let him go to one of the best tech schools instead. So I found that pretty interesting. And he says it was only by a miraculous divine intervention that he was cured from cholera. And
I can relate not to the magical cure part, but I can relate to the making yourself sick over like life, I guess, forced aspects of life that seem insurmountable.
Yeah, stress itself has a great deal to do with it. And then our mind over matter, like when you don't want to do something so much, your body starts to revolt.
Yeah. And then I wonder too, if that's like actual divine intervention. I mean, the being born in a lightning storm thing is pretty crazy. Like it's almost like he was an electricity spirit or whatever, like made manifest. And, but then also this divine or this miraculous like healing he got too. I wonder if that was part of like his will, trying to get his father, if his father's religious and he can make it seem like it's some sort of divine intervention, then he's more likely to allow him to do it maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't his first invention was something to help him catch frogs, wasn't it? And he kind of used it to outdo his brothers or his friends. And that was kind of like his first major invention when he was a kid, was a thing to catch frogs. And he didn't let them know how he was doing it, but I think he gave it to them as a Christmas present the next year.
Oh, that's so cute.
That's awesome.
I love that. I love that point too about him. If he spent a lot of time alone, and you feel like you're kind of like the weirdo, like playing by yourself or whatever, but actually that's like the time when you're developing your internal self and probably part of what he's, such a genius later in life.
Yeah.
Well, even going back to when I was a kid, there were no I mean, there was no Game Boy, no nothing like that. It was go out to the woods and find some sticks and some mud and rocks and whatever, and make things up, or get a cardboard box and build a fort or whatever. You really used your imagination. There were no apps or anything like that to help you think.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I remember when I was 6 years old watching Star Wars and going home and getting big cardboard boxes and making my own ships to have my battles in with my friends. I mean, and I tried to explain that to my right, and I tried to explain that to my kid, and she looked at me like I was mentally handicapped. Like, Dad, why would you even do that? It's a box. Like, yeah.
You're like, but that's what I wonder. Like, if Tesla was born today, would he still be as genius? Would he still be Tesla? Because we do have it's almost like this barrage of this maze of distractions you have to try and get through just to be able to think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you guys think motivated Tesla to then become who he became or do the sort of work that he did?
Well, I found that his major motivation was he was like, any kind of a beauty queen. He wanted peace on earth.
Yeah.
He did. He really wanted peace on earth. And in other words, he wanted to abolish war. He wanted to make life easier for humans. And his love was service through creation. He really just wanted to make this world a better place. And he was able to tap into the field and to the source and really, give us some gifts that were so very suppressed. And he was very intelligent, and he was a very prolific inventor and was very dedicated to persevering humanity. And his humanitarian efforts were just unsurpassed by many people who were given much more credit. So definitely deserves to be in the history books. And it's definitely questioning that he's not.
Right. It is very, very telling of people's motivations that he is not in there. Sasha just said that she had heard that his uncle was part of the reason why he, I guess, got interested in some of the stuff he got interested in. Did you see that anywhere, either of you?
Yeah. We were talking about his uncle or Trump's uncle?
I know, that's what I got confused too. I'm like, wait, is she thinking of Trump and his uncle? But no, Sasha says that Tesla's uncle was maybe somehow instrumental in him kind of following the path he did.
Oh, no, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that either. I wonder, I don't know. Shoot, I just lost my train of thought too. I was going to say something else.
Well, the town he lived in, I think is pronounced Gospik. He considered himself very much kind of a weakling and a coward, and even reflected about that in his autobiography. And but he did end up redeeming himself, because they were showing off a new fire truck, and it wouldn't spray the water, but he figured out that it was a blockage in the hose in the river, and he swam down in and unblocked it, and I guess redeemed himself and kind of became a town hero. But he was originally not viewed very fondly by the townspeople. So he, I guess, originally kind of felt ostracized. Especially in his childhood.
I can imagine, because people who are intelligent and insightful, and especially if he has some sort of connection to a different realm, people seem to tend to not like those people very much.
Well, as we know, the herd of sheep don't like fireworks, so sheeple are the same way when it comes mentally. And I mean, I don't mean that in the most derogatory way. I just mean that in the manner of their group think.
Right.
Like the old NPC meme that's circulating so often now.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. It's like whether you like it or not, that tends to be a way to describe people's behaviors, unfortunately. But I just think of Tesla like powder, like he came in with the lightning storm and
Right. Oh, awesome. Yeah, incredible
shocked
movie.
everyone.
Or the one with Travolta where he gets that thing in his brain when the light hits him outside the bar, and he gains all these abilities to like memorize all these books, and he can move things and heal people, but it ends up killing him in the end because it like grows all over his brain.
Oh, I did not see that. That sounds cool.
Yes, with John Travolta. I can look it up. You're probably looking it up right now, I'm sure. So
I feel like I'm not actually. I'm bad at that.
Oh, okay.
But I was actually just tracing a bottle cap on paper because I'm weird and I have ADHD. But I was just thinking that I wonder how much Tesla inspired films like that, you know? And I also wonder if he didn't seem to die prematurely, right? Like he made it to a ripe old age.
Well, he was living, I think it was in a hotel, but just really kind of starving to death. It just looked horrible, and no one gave him any attention in any shape or form, and was absolutely impoverished. But when he died, G-men showed up and basically took everything out of his room.
Yes.
So, you know, if they knew what was going on with them, it was almost like they were just buying his time, like, yeah, this guy will leave this place soon and we can have all the goodies.
Right. Okay, and we're going to get back to that, but it makes me wonder if there's something in that has to do with like law or consent or whatever, because why wouldn't they have just robbed him blind before that? Like if he was already weakened and in that state, you know, why did they wait until he died to kind of legally take his stuff? It's interesting.
Well, because if you do it while he's alive, he becomes a martyr. So better to let him die in obscurity and then just weasel in and steal everything for yourself. And then later on would be like, oh, look, you know, we figured out 0-point energy. Like, no, you didn't, you liar, you know.
Or like never tell anyone, because that would be undermining your profit margin.
I was being a little bit too much hopeful there with giving the government anything beyond amoral, you know.
We got to jailbreak that shit, you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what projects of Tesla's were your guys' favorites? Oh, I think Harmony got frozen.
Harmony?
Oh, you cut out there for a minute. What was that?
Oh, I was asking what projects of Tesla's are your favorite?
Oh, the inventions that are my favorite.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question. Personally, I like the tower and how he was going to basically distribute free wireless energy to humanity and to the world. And I really find it fascinating also the connection of Tesla and the Philadelphia experiment. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Philadelphia experiment or his connections.
I didn't know that you had a connection to it, but I know what you're talking about, where they were trying to time travel or travel through dimensions, and they put that ship, the Eldridge or something through. Like
it started out he wanted.
Go ahead.
Yeah. It started out he wanted to, or the government was experimenting with taking a ship off of the radar. And they, on the test day, not only did they succeed, but the ship disappeared. Like not only disappeared from radar, but it disappeared. Physically. And then it showed up like a day or two later in like miles and miles away. But the people were either embedded in the walls, or they were gone crazy, or they were immediately discharged by pistol.
Wait, what do you mean? Like,
and that's the they like killed him. They're like, oh, you're discharged.
I thought,
and that's what the story said.
never found again, but there was like some stories where you could like sometimes hear them or something, almost like they were screaming like from a wall that wasn't there, like just on the other side. It's like, I don't know, in my head, this is like the worst possible fate, is that you're stuck in some like limbo dimension and you can see everything still, but nobody can see you.
Yeah, I think maybe that's part of like the stuck in the walls thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Because like literally they say people were like, they had like their bodies through the metal and interdimensional rift happened, and they, either got sucked into some vortex or they, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it's very fascinating to me that his 0 point technology and the different research that he was doing actually was called upon in that moment, and then in other moments by JP Morgan, and then of course again by Edison, and then the other guy, Marconi, and how he was, a lot of these correspondences back and forth between these people actually dictated how our future would be, and how notable he would become.
So, and this is like, what we're talking about, 18 whatever, right? I'm bad with details. Oh.
Late.
Yeah.
1870, 80, 90.
Okay. So like this technology to send a ship into another dimension is over 100 years old.
Yeah.
It makes me, you know, when we talk about like black budgets and black ops being possibly like 10 years ahead of what the consumer sees or what the regular citizen sees, I'm like, I think it's more like 100 years ahead of what we could see. Like, I'm pretty sure at this point, we probably can't even imagine the shit that they're capable of doing.
Well, absolutely. To go off on a little tangent for a second, my grandpa, I think you've met him, he worked as a spy equipment retailer to underground companies. He got that was not seen by the common citizen was always 20 to 30 years in advance of and perfected than anything that we would see. And it was always like that. And he didn't have top clearance. And so whatever he was seeing was most likely just the trickle down of what was being shown to many other people in high categories in the elite, you know. So
oh, that's
it's
fascinating.
Yeah. And that's verified. He's like 30 years easy, you know. And so when you think about that, it verifies that, you know, they're not going to give anything to us. It's just like chemtrails. They've been perfecting that, you know, for years. They were using it back in the Vietnam War, and they verified that. So, you know, it's a matter of how much you look into it, really.
And we get this crappy, you know, we're supposedly have like 5G and like super fast internet and whatever, and we can hardly talk to each other on the internet.
Yeah.
It's like glitchy and like
supposedly.
Right. And they know,
but it's about the topic that we're talking about. I'm sure if we're talking about shoes and makeup, it'd be just fine.
I bet money that you're right. I totally agree with that. I think it's that micromanaged. What were you going to say, Alan?
Oh, I was going to say what's interesting, though, is the supposed death ray that Tesla said he had created. Supposedly the Tunguska blast in Siberia, Russia, where all the trees were flattened, which was like 80 million trees, they estimated. He said that was what he had actually done as a demonstration. And
wow.
then it was like nothing was said after that. But
wow.
There's kind of interesting stuff over in Russia like that with weapons that have been left there for long. Sorry, I'm getting on a never mind.
No, I like this tangent. Is that those things that are like domes that are set into the earth and they seem to have like, what are those?
Well, there's supposedly a leftover alien weapons defense system, and all of the people that went there on the various expeditions all received radiation poisoning because the systems are breaking down and seeping because they've been there for untold years, even though the Earth's only 5,000 years old.
Oh,
But
totally.
right. But yeah, I mean, the thing though that's so amazing with even the most smallest invention can have just mind cultural altering effects on how human beings treat each other, especially when you deal with the powers that be. For myself, I consider a blight on my family's history where my my great grandfather created the schematics for the cockpit of the fighter jet we use, like as evolved into now. I have the paper to where he's down the road from where I live in Fairborn, Ohio, by Wright Pat Air Force Base, handing over the schematics to the generals there and sold it to the government of the U.S. Then they then used to create, these weapons of death that they just strafe people and murder and countless amounts of people. So I'm thoroughly disgusted that great grandfather did that, considering my Hungarian family came from Hungary when the Nazis came into power because they were servants of the royalty, and those people were put to death when the government sold out to the Nazis. So all my family were executed over there, and 3 of them were put on a ship when they were, I think it was 10, 11, and 12, to come over to the U.S. to escape, and only one made it. And then he comes over here, and then he marries a woman who came over here that made that escape, and then he, sells something like that to the U.S. government. Like, did you not learn anything from the country you were in?
Well,
So
that's what surprises me too about Tesla making like a death ray. It was like, did he intentionally do that? Was he meaning it to be used for something else that wouldn't be destructive? I mean, it seems like a destructive thing no matter how you use it. So,
right.
Given his penchant for peace and wanting to make the world better, I wonder why that technology even came about. I mean, maybe that's just part of being a scientist, is you create what you can.
Right. And then the parasites on the side are like, beautiful, feast of death and suffering and pain I can use.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like the technology that Albert Einstein introduced with the atomic bomb. It was not supposed to be used for that. It was supposed to be used for free energy, and it's being used in the wrong way.
Right.
And it's a lot of those sciences, they can often be distorted into being used for one benevolent or one malevolent way, just depending on the mind being harnessed to use it.
Good point. Yeah. We have this people in power who are, like you're saying, parasitical and power hungry, then they're going to misuse anything they can.
Yeah, like with Oppenheimer, I think.
Yeah, Tesla himself even called them a disease on humanity. He said he viewed them as nothing more than a disease on this earth.
It's a perfect way to describe them.
Yeah.
What were you going to say about Oppenheimer?
Well, I think when he realized what was created with the bomb, he said, I think he said something like, I've become death now, in like a very self-loathing reflection on what had been done. I mean, if you even think about the fact of the theory of germs, I mean, that's turned into, now they create viruses that are, can wipe people out, like whole cities with just a globe that big of it,
Right.
Something that was used to cure people. You wash your hands, kill the bacteria under your nails, then someone's like, maybe we should breed ones that actually eat people and spread them out as a weapon.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I think the quote, I love it. It's, I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Yeah. Which is ironic because that's what the term was in the Sanskrit. In the Sanskrit historical stories of India with the battles between the various yaksas, devas, asuras, and the various deities, gods, and demigods. They had a nuclear weapon called the Brahmashastra, and it was basically a nuclear weapon, and it was actually used in a city called Mohenjo-daro, and they found the city. And of course, it's got radioactivity everywhere. It's into the BC era, and that glass is there that's only created in nuclear explosions.
Yes.
So,
and we find that all over the world, which just like those weapons that were left in Russia where the Tunguska explosion was, it's like evidence of things that we don't understand, at least going on way before we think that things happened.
Right. In mythology.
Yeah, in mythology, of course.
Right.
I'm like, you'll believe people when people say like, oh, well, the Egyptians, you know, why would you look down on them? They say that they helped build the pyramids, so they did. But it's like, well, they also say that they were not the first people there and that the pyramids existed before they got there, but we don't believe that? Like, what? I don't, you can't like take it both ways. Like, pick your battle, I guess.
Yeah, they also say that Columbus discovered America.
That raping pig.
Right.
So
yeah, he's kind of like JP Morgan and Edison.
Yeah, they're all like the same cronies from the same groups and the same families all throughout.
Rewriting history to their own benefit, stealing other people's ideas.
Seriously. Yeah. So what do you guys think about the idea that Tesla got some of his ideas from actual other beings of some kind?
Well, didn't he create the device where he heard the voices in the ether, as he would call it, which is an appropriate term for it? And can't you even make those devices that are like those jars with like a copper wire or something that you put in it and you can hear the voices out of it based on something he did?
Have you done that?
No, I've watched videos and have books on it, but I've never actually created one myself.
I had never heard that. Like, I thought when it would go out into nature and like almost meditate and have visions of beings, I didn't know that he had a device that he used to maybe hear beings.
Well, yeah, he talked about that if you could tap into it with energy, you can realize that there's knowledge and voices all around us communicating with us. I mean, you did have, I think it was Edison created the, like a, kind of like a first spirit box or device to listen to the dead, I think it was.
Wow.
Well, you know, modern day EVPs is just playing a recorder and you can get the voices, you know, in real time and listen to them when you're doing, we've done it all the time in our investigations, and you'll get a voice like, we got a voice in Mancy, you know, the prison in Mansfield, and it's a little girl talking. Well, why would, you know, so you have spirits that wander all over the place. I mean, it makes you take a second guess about when you're getting undressed to get in the shower, like,
yeah.
No,
pre-show every day.
Yeah. I think that's part of the reason we can't see the interdimensional beings, is so that the fear isn't invoked. I definitely agree with what you were saying. And then the part about him creating a receiver and being a receiver were both things that he did and talked about. He created radio waves, or he created a device that would pick up radio waves from space, and he actually was one of the first to transmit a message out, and he got a reply, and he said that it was some kind of interdimensional being that was relaying a message that they were some kind of off-planet creature that was dominating and controlling Earthlings, and they created us, and that they were going to continue to try to dominate us. And then he couldn't figure out, or he tried to contact the government, and then they just were blowing him off. And then he also had a quote about his brain being a receiver. He said his brain is the only receiver in the universe, and there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. And so I think on one aspect, he was constantly a receiver. He was constantly in contact with interdimensional beings, or with his God source, or with some kind of divine interdimensional beings that were helping him to tap into his own innate abilities. And then I also think that there was this device that he was able to measure pulses and radio waves. And then he also talked about this is a article from Collier's, March 1901. It was called Talking with the Planets. And basically he talked about measuring the frequency of the Earth. And before the Schumann resonance was actually patented and given a name, he was exploring the hertz of the Earth and the hertz of human bodies and the frequencies that are interconnected. And he said when that is disrupted, it can cause great shifts on the human body, and including mind control. And the government also decided that that was very important information for them to have and for us to not have. And another reason they deemed him to be a dangerous man.
Wow.
Is because he had these ideas that would revolutionize humanity and healing, and just how we interact with nature. And he believed that like harnessing nature for the benefit of humanity.
That's more than I knew before also. So like these beings that created us allegedly want to keep dominion, not even dominion. Dominion actually implies some sort of caretaking, but I mean, literally domination over us and keeping us, I guess, enslaved. Like, did he give any hint as to like what their motivation is, or why that they would be intent on doing that instead of letting us live happily?
The part that I found, let me see. It just said that he got a message, and the only message was that they were trying to dominate, and they were in control of humanity, and then they had a plan to dominate and continue to use us in their great plan. And then
so this is very it ties in with Gnostic ideas too, right, where the creator god is actually the evil sort of force and the controlling, jealous god, whereas there is a actual source of the universe that's more loving and is not the source that literally created us.
Yeah, the false demiurge is called Eodaboleth. That's what its name is.
Eodaboleth.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sounds like a bad guy.
Yeah. It's the one thing that's kind of interesting about Tesla, that he also, of course, in the vein of myself, actually became really interested in Buddhism because he met someone called Swami Vivekananda at a world religion fair. Yeah, and he was thought to be a pretty chaste person, even though he was seen out dining with a lot of various women. He was invited to certain parties that were, I guess you could kind of be called soirees, and he had no interest whatsoever in it. So he was a pretty disciplined, controlled, and kind of off to himself guy, kind of as you would consider maybe like hermeticized or sealed.
Interesting. Wow. But then it seems like some of these spiritual entities that he was in contact with were helpful. So that was just maybe the one kind of message he received from the controlling faction, but then there was other maybe entities involved that were more helpful, or was it just that maybe he was, like he said, like a receiver of whatever good source in the universe there is, and there wasn't any helpful entities at all?
I think it's kind of like when you're tapping into your own source, you kind of know. You kind of know, you feel the resonance and you use your own discernment. And he was constantly connected and tapped in. And then he had this machine that was picking up this pulse and it was relaying a message. And that was the message that he transcribed. So like, we don't know if that message he transcribed, who that was from, where it was from. Some people said, like, there was this newspaper article that said that it could have been from Mars, our neighbors Mars or Venus, and the inhabitants of Mars and Venus, which,
Saturn.
you know,
It's from Saturn.
if you study Laura Eisenhower or any of her, what she's saying, there is inhabitants on Mars and possibly Venus. And we don't know exactly where the message was from, but we do know that he received a radio frequency, and that, I mean, it could have even been just from the government messing with him or whatever. But we do know that he was constantly being messed with. He was constantly being made out to be crazy, and diminished his intelligence so that they could kind of hijack the timeline and the storyline for their own good.
Yeah, I wonder too, like, I mean, they're, like you're saying, he's being messed with and fucked with, probably by the government, probably by other rich, wealthy interests that want to see him silenced, and then possibly by these entities as well. And then this is like the smallest part of it probably, but I just feel like when Edison started frying animals alive, like that, if you're that sort of a peaceful, loving person that wants these things to be used for the benefit of all beings, and then your competitor is like murdering animals, sentient animals, like in front of people for fun, like that would also fuck with me. Like that would bring me to a pretty low point, I think.
Yeah, not just a small one, not just a small one. Edison fried an elephant.
An elephant, like one of the most loving creatures on the planet. What an asshole Edison is.
And then he not only did that, he took that technology and he implemented it into electric chairs and in electrocuting human beings.
Oh God.
Yeah. I mean, he must have felt like he was like, he knew one of the biggest secrets in the world regarding the fate of mankind, and no one even cared.
Yeah.
You know, it just must have been insanity.
I cannot imagine that.
He even said like his technology was ahead of his times, and that's why he was thwarted. He said the laws of nature will prevail. It's just a matter of time.
Didn't there's that drunk history that I was mentioning to you guys off air, which is hilarious, and there's a part of it that I think it's mostly true. It's like the historian actually knows their stuff. They just happen to be drunk, but they were talking about how he like would have these parties and show off his inventions to all these people, and they would like love it and ooh and ah. But when he said he thought that electricity could be transmitted wirelessly, people just kind of like shut down, looked at him like he was crazy, and left. You know, and it's like, but this is the best part. Like, where are you all going? I just feel like it must have been so lonely.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, that's why he hung out with pigeons.
Yeah, seriously, they're like his only friends. What do you guys think about the attention that he did get from Edison and like the Rockefellers and all of these people?
Well,
yeah, that was intense. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Well, I do think I'm sure they probably viewed him wide-eyed to start with, but from the filter of greed, power, covetousness, desire, control, and when they realized he was kind of using them for a better reason, I'm sure they felt pretty disgusted, because usually people like that don't like people who have a humanitarian slant to what they do, unless it's to further an agenda of using people even more. Like, I don't know, the Red Cross.
Right.
And
the white helmets.
Right, exactly. And so I think Tesla himself really hoped of kind of, let's see if we can get these people to kind of fall in line with a more compassionate version of things. And I know if you look at the way the money was pulled away from them, especially with like the tower she was talking about that he built, and was that Westinghouse that he was involved with, that with giving the money to build
Westinghouse, yeah.
Yeah, and then he saw what he wanted to do with the free energy, and it's like, oh hell no.
Yeah.
You know, so pull the funding out of that, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, that was
Yeah.
Westinghouse, not Rockefeller?
No, Westinghouse, it was after Rockefeller Rockefeller was going to, or I think it was that Rockefeller was funding a different project, and then Marconi came in with the radio tower, and so then JP Morgan decided he was going to start questioning Tesla. Tesla actually was putting in the works for the Wardenclyffe designs of the Wardenclyffe Tower, but it was a different tower. And then JP, he was like kind of using their own medicine against them and like not telling them exactly what he was going to do. And then Morgan found out, and he cut all the funding and started to do a lot of slandering. And then Westinghouse came in, and he built the Wardenclyffe Tower. And then the Westinghouse decided, or his business was going under. After funding, he gave a lot of funding to Tesla. The business was going under, and then Tesla decided to rip up his contract with Westinghouse, because Westinghouse was like one of the only people who actually like listened to him and was going through with it. But I think JP Morgan actually probably did something with Westinghouse too, probably put his company under. Very powerful man.
Yeah, I'm sure like you were saying, that they didn't like that he was smarter than them in the first place. And then especially if he was trying to trick them in any way or outsmart them, that probably pissed them off even more. So I think even more than money, they love themselves, their pride.
Yeah, well, that was the thing, is JP Morgan tower, thinking that it was the radio tower and that he would make millions off of it. And then they took that same technology, and they actually, like, he said that it would create aurora borealis all over the world, or all over the area and across the world. And they actually, like where you see aurora borealis the most is Alaska. Well, that's where the HARP facilities are.
Oh, true.
And the greatest HARP facility is using the same technology. So they are using this technology. They're just using it in a different way. And it's very interesting.
That is unfortunate. I love the aurora borealis. I would love it if it was facilities. Yeah. We could do a whole episode on HARP.
Yeah, I remember learning all about that when I lived in Alaska and seeing the aurora borealis. And did I relay the story about going to the electric company in Anchorage?
Not that I remember, but that doesn't mean you didn't.
Yeah, that was, I don't even know how to explain that environment. I was literally just delivering a sub there, and I got out of my car and walked into the front door of this facility. It looked like something out of the Fritz Lang Metropolis movie. And I walked in the front lobby, and literally like something out of a weird B movie, everybody in the lobby, like a herd of insects, just stopped and stared at me.
Oh, creepy.
And it was, I mean, it was something very unnerving. And I just kind of walked across to the counter, and the two, this man and woman sitting there were like, "Can I help you?" Yeah, I'm here to deliver. I think his name was John or James's sub. And they kind of looked really concerned. They're like, "We'll let him know you're here." And he came out and paid. And like during this whole time, as I'm standing there, just nobody's moving, just staring at me. It was like, yeah, I can't get out of here fast enough. And they gave me the money, and I walked out of there, and I went back and said, "I'll never deliver there again." And the owner of the business said, "Oh, okay." And that was it. So it was
I bet they sacrificed John or James to the demons that night.
Right.
They're like, "You don't order shit. You don't know this."
Yeah. How dare you bring an outsider in? I mean, it was like going into one of those weird ass Adventist compounds, you know?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Don't go in that, that's the Abudelhof, that's the breeding hall. Don't go in there or whatever.
You're just
So
like
it's,
so obviously an outsider to them. They're like so
oh, sure,
confused by your presence.
sure. Yeah, it was really weird. But yeah, there was a lot of weird government stuff like that up in Alaska that people would talk about all the time. Whoops.
What do you guys think about the possibility that those lights that have been in the sky lately, there's like blue lights in the sky, and like in New York, I want to say there was like blue and green, like light show across the ground. It didn't seem to have like sound to it. It was just there. Like, do you guys think that is connected with any of this type of technology, or do you know what I'm talking about? Brett just brought it up in the chat, and I was like, that's an interesting possible correlation there.
I heard blue lights, and then it witched out a little bit. The blue lights that what?
There's been like blue lights in the sky in various places around the world recently. I want to say only in the past few weeks, maybe months.
Oh yeah,
You know,
and like the different columns of light too.
oh yeah, the columns too. I just saw
Yeah.
that the other day. So I guess like for the past month, maybe there's been some. I mean, we always could go find random videos from random places and find weird sky phenomenon, but it seems like there's been sort of a glut of them recently, and they've all been blue or green. I don't know if it's connected with any of this technology or not, or if it's something else entirely. I guess nobody really knows, but it's interesting to think that it might be connected. I always just worry that when there's stuff like this starting to happen, that it's going to be this false alien invasion that we've been prepped for by Werner von Braun or whoever. Wasn't that the guy that said, these are the ways that the government will seize control slowly? Like first it's going to be world war, and then it's going to be terrorism, and then it's going to be alien invasion.
Well, the project, what is it? The Project Blue Beam. That's the one where they can project giant images.
Yes.
There's been many, many, many videos coming out of China, because I get a lot of media from there of all of these supposed floating cities that just appear out of nowhere.
But, Morgana.
Right. And I
Yeah. All the
definitely
holograms.
Right, and I definitely do not think it's Avalon popping up all of a sudden. I think it's more like a projected government image. I'm waiting for one to show, like in Japan, Godzilla off on the coast, or just something so outlandish that people are like, well, I don't know, maybe they're trolling us, or maybe it's Godzilla.
That's an epic level troll.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's just really go for broke and just really screw with people.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole, and if anybody's offended by this, well, tough shit. But the whole thing with the three prophecies of Fatima, with the disc rotating in the sky in Portugal or whatever, with the Lady of Guadalupe or whatever, and then there's like the three prophecies, and they saw the Virgin Mary. We totally lost.
Oh, maybe something happened. She'll be back.
Okay. Yeah. So there's the three prophecies. The two prophecies have happened, but anyways, yeah. There's a disc floats up into the sky in front of the sun and rotates, and sparks come out. I mean, it's, the whole alien thing. People see that, and then they're like, they mocked on the Babylon 5 series with the Vorlons programming humans to have a genetic predisposition to want to worship these entities as gods, which you also see written about in the Anunnaki, the cuneiform tablets that what's his face translated, the first one to really go at it, Zechariah Sitchin.
Oh, right.
I mean, just all of this stuff, which is nothing but just epic trolling of the human race, and just people are just too easily taken aback. Sorry, I'll circle back around. As you were saying about the lights, you never know where they're going to come from, because you can get them from earthquakes, you can get them from gaslight, you can get them from the various fireballs that appear, plasma. you also have anything with huge power systems. Because I've actually seen, when I was working at a mall, I was driving in one day and I saw something like that on a horizon. I thought, that's like one of the most beautifulest things I've ever seen. And it was a power system that was blowing up, that had overheat, right, and short circuited, but it looked like that on the horizon.
Oh, how beautiful. But it's
Wow,
actually
wow.
this like destruction thing, but it's
Right.
really cool.
Well, right. You're also hitting on another point there. It might be something that people are drawn to, but that color, with anybody that knows anything about welding, which I've done, that's not one of the colors you get near. Because that when you get into the blue and the whites, you're going to get blinded if you look directly at the spark from a MIG welder. That's why you have to wear the welding goggles when you MIG weld.
Right.
That color. Same thing with the stars that burn that color and such.
Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely something to watch out for. I always think like if there's going to be an alien invasion, I'm just going to take it as it comes, because I'm going to first doubt that it's even real, and then if there actually seems to be beings walking around amongst us, like I'll feel them out as I encounter them, because I don't trust any of the bullshit tricks that they try to play. But let's move towards the end of his life, which we kind of touched on, that he did make it to old age, but he was kind of bereft of everything and maybe in love with pigeons.
Yeah,
What do you
I
guys
found out
want to
some
say about
pretty
that?
interesting information about the end of his life. I think Alan was talking about how he met Swami Vivekananda, and he studied alongside him, and started after that he began using a lot of Sanskrit words to describe some of his theories, like akasha and prana and words like that, to describe the source within matter. And then he also started to study psychic communication and different modalities and ways that people have been using psychic communication in practices at the time. And then he also, a day before he died, or the day he died was the day before he had scheduled to share some of his plans with the US government. And he passed in the night before he had this day scheduled. It was plans to abolish war. And the night before, at the hotel in the New Yorker. And he was moving from hotel to hotel, unable to really pay for where he was living and his commodities. And so he would pay for these month-long to several month-long stints in these hotels with trunks of his paperwork and his research. And so after he passed, when the government was deemed his information to be dangerous, and they needed it for further research of their own, they went to all these hotels trying to gather these trunks, and they found several of these trunks, and there was a few that they hadn't found, and this one man got a hold of one of these trunks, and his name was Alfred. I'm not sure what his last name was, but he bought one of these boxes at an auction, and it had journals in it. And it also stated on a journal in 1899 that he was contacted with ETs. And then that was when he was at the place where he found the Schumann residence. They said that they were secretly controlling mankind, and they were going to work at domination. And it was in these journals as well that they found this information. And then he had stored this box in his basement, and it had gotten water damaged and moldy. And he was transcribing all this information because he thought it was pretty important. And through transcribing it, he actually learned a bunch of things about different alternative energies and different contacts with ETs. And he said that some men in black showed up at his door one day, or he got a phone call about this information. And like a minute after he got off the phone, these three men, he heard a knock on his door, and he went to the door, and there was three men standing inside of his door. The door was already open, and they said, "Oh, it looks like you left it open, and we have something to say." And they were saying, "You will give us this information." Or first they wanted to buy the box. And he's like, "How do you even know about this?" And then they're like, "Oh, well," and then they started getting like demanding and saying, "No, we're going to take it." And then when they left, they didn't take it, but then he like walked out after them, and then they were disappeared. And then he went back to go to the box, and everything in the room pertaining to Nikola Tesla was gone. His hard drive had been wiped out of everything, even stuff that wasn't pertaining to Nikola Tesla. And all of the box and everything he transcribed was gone. He said he didn't want to tell anybody for years because he thought that they think he was crazy. But then he heard about these other trunks that were coming, that people were talking about, and that's when he decided to come forward with this information.
This is the kind of shit that makes me think that Men in Black are time traveling androids. Because like, how did they know so specifically like when to go and how they disappear? They always show up in like the weirdest timing. They seem to be able to get into places they shouldn't be able to get into. But there's also some sort of element of it that seems to have to do with that invitation thing. Like, they shouldn't have been able to get into his house and take his stuff unless they felt like they had some sort of an invitation to do so. Because in other stories, and a lot of them, they can't. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Crazy.
I found that to be definitely a story worth sharing. And then, of course, that moves into, you know, the story of John Trump and how he got his paperwork after he passed away.
Yeah. And that is the creepiest part. Well, what were you going to say first, Alan?
Oh, just with those Men in Black douchebags, they have the ability to cause a mental lapse of memory, and it seems like you're doing something, but you're actually not, and that's why you lose track of time, and they disappear all of a sudden, and things are gone in your house. Because for a point of time, you're basically hypnotized, and that's kind of where the whole concept in the movie series of them using the neural
the blaster thing,
the neuralizers, which is really a ripoff of an 80s movie which was called Lookers, which was about having a gun that could hypnotize people when you would flash it at their eyes. And then they would do things to you while you were hypnotized, and you didn't realize it until something was done to you, like they would hit you or kill you, or you slowly came out of it later. So
that's what he also described, that Alfred guy. He said that these three men, he said the two stood behind. The one talked to him. They always looked him straight in the eye, and they just kept staring at him in his eyes and started talking in this very slow, hypnotic voice. And then afterward, he said he was in shock for like 2 weeks before he could even wrap his mind around what had happened before he could tell his wife.
Wow.
So it was wild.
Yeah, there's actual martial arts there's actually martial arts systems where those techniques are taught to do stuff to opponents, to where if you make eye contact with them and speak a certain way, you can null them to where they don't realize what you're doing from the neck down, which allows you to then strike or stab or kill them. And so that's why they can take out so many opponents one after another, because they don't realize that they're paused for a second, and then the person strikes, cuts and kills them. So
So is there a way to resist hypnotism then?
Well, first off, if your guard's up, but unless you meditate or you have some method of training your mind, protecting it, which That's what the term mantra means, which is to kind of encircle and protect the mind with repetitiveness.
I
The
like
same
that.
thing with prayer and chanting, because it vibrates the air and vibrates your body at the same time, which is why prayers and chantings heal or harm people. Like with like in martial arts with the ki scream, when people attack people, there's certain words and intonations in, of course, Sanskrit that can be passed down from certain people that can cause effects on others, and you can cause reality to vibrate and do certain things. So there's a whole
Direct
science to this.
magic there, or science. I mean, it's science, but it's like you're creating something with your words.
Right, spelled with a K.
Yeah, I just thought people wanted to yell while they kicked.
Right.
There's
right,
actually a method to this madness.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
It's just been turned into an almost mocking parody of itself, with like people doing katas in the tournaments, and they're like screaming every time they do anything, and it's like that's not what you're supposed to be doing it.
That's not the point of it.
No,
It's actually channeling energy.
right.
That's why it's ki. It's because it's the ki, the chi that you're moving.
Right. There's a reason they're doing it wrong when you see them do something and they stop and then they scream. That's incorrect. You do it while you're hitting the person, to vibrate your force, and to tense your muscles up at the point of when you strike. So when they stop and they're standing there looking, all terrifying and screaming, it's like, yeah, you're doing it wrong.
And this is just one more time where I'm like, really want to learn some martial arts, because that's so badass.
Well, going back to what like Harmony's saying and you're saying with taking this technology and using it for evil, the same thing's done in the martial arts with the understanding of like what the prana and the chi and the ki and the meridians in traditional Chinese medicine, as well as Ayurvedic medicine. There's points on the body that can cause massive damage, harm, pain, death. And in India, it's called the marma adi. In Chinese, there's a couple different terms, but the most famous one is called dimak. And so there's all kinds of methods of using healing potentials to also be perverted into harm. And that's the problem, like with the American government getting Tesla stuff. You don't want them to have it because their intent, their their focus of their mind is completely negative. It's yin, it's all dark and negative. It's not positive. And that's the same thing with all of these morons who learn these specific pressure point strike, but don't understand the totality of the body. When you hit certain combinations, there's ways you've got to heal that damage that's not all healed the same way every time. So when you see them hitting like 30 different spots, but they use the same way to revive the person, no, you're doing it incorrect. And a lot of times it's them hypnotizing people who are allowing themselves to be duped into it, like people that go to hypnosis shows and comedy clubs.
Yeah, I've always been wary of that. I'm like, I don't want anybody random person hypnotizing me. I don't know what their intentions are.
Right. Wake up clucking like a chicken.
Yeah. Well, I always tell myself I can't be hypnotized because it makes me feel better. But so let's get back to the Trump. So Tesla dies, a bunch of his work goes missing. Apparently some of it ends up with this Alfred guy, but the government swoops in and grabs some. One of the people who gets to peruse it happens to be Trump's uncle.
Yeah, isn't that an interesting twist on the plot?
It's such an interesting twist, and I had never learned it until Trump was president. So I don't know if part of me wonders if it's true.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research on that, and of course it's really easy to fudge, anything if you're in that much power.
Right.
But there is some pretty uncanny evidence of like how powerful his uncle actually was. Okay. He was a scientist at MIT. He was a physicist, and let me see if I can find this. I have a little notes on this. So he was a MIT scientist, physicist, and engineer, and he actually made his mark in the development of high voltage generators and in World War II radar therapies. He mistakenly found that radiation helps blast away cancer. So he was a very powerful and prominent scientist who was definitely someone who you would call when you are confiscating one of the other most powerful physicist and engineer minds, and you don't know how to decipher any of these information. And so they had him come in, and there's an actual interview where on YouTube where you can actually see him speak about finding in the back, you know, and back when black and white television, I don't know what year it was, but
Right.
he speaks about finding, or the government calling on him to decipher these papers and this research. And he talks about 0-point technology and how really there was nothing in, and he told the government there was nothing in these findings and these research, but then he goes on to talk about 0-point technology. And I'm not sure if he really realizes what he reveals, but 0-point technology goes hand in hand with time travel. And so a lot of people are going, well, wow, you had some information from Tesla about alternative energies, about time travel, and now your nephew seems to unhandedly have the presidency in some weird, strange way.
Yeah.
And it's very curious. And I know that there's always a way to like plant this information in, but from the studies that I've done and from the different sources that they all come from, like all different parts of the bird, right wing, left wing, information, you really can put the pieces together in all different countries and all their different information, how it kind of comes in. You can really see that he most likely did have this paperwork, did go through it, and did lie to the government saying that there wasn't really much to it. He didn't really have a whole lot there, and then used it for his own benevolence. And who knows, he could have been in contact with people or beings that said, do not under any circumstance disclose this information to the government.
True.
For other reasons, or it could have just been personal gain.
And so then there's this collection of
uncanny, had a
uncanny,
lot of humanitarian efforts too.
there's this collection of uncanny coincidence or evidence of time travel, where we've got that book, the not only the Baron Trump's marvelous underground travels, which I've read and is a very, I'm sure at the time it was a fun, well-written book, but looking at it now, it seems not well-written. But it's about Baron Trump, little Baron Trump going around with his dog, finding underground realms where other beings lived, like breakaway civilizations. We've got the Sonora Aero Club, I want to say, that had like the Trump logo on one of their alleged dirigibles or whatever that they flew around. We've got like paintings of the Trump name on those from back in the day, which I can't remember the guy who painted them. And then the book that same author wrote after Baron Trump's underground journal,
The Last
Adventures,
President,
is The Last President. And it's about this fucking president who's a lot like Trump, who lives in New York, and there's like protests outside of this, grand skyscraper, just like the one Trump lives in. And this leads to, like, I can't remember exactly, but it's like it leads to a declaration of national emergency, and then they suspend the elections, and then he's just president forever or something like that. So it's almost like he did go back in time, or Barron did at least, and then told this guy all this shit, or, and he wrote it as though it was fiction, but it's actually unveiling our possible future.
Yeah, and then you have the Back to the Future coincidences.
Oh, true.
About the dates and who is president, and it just happens to be Biff, and Biff just happens to have this huge tower, a lot like Trump Towers, and there's all these little synchronicities between their look, their mannerism, their different places in society, and between Trump and Biff. And so I just kind of jokingly call Trump Biff sometimes, because that's just kind of how I see him. And the funny part about that is, like, before I put the correlation together, when everyone was freaking out about the Trump becoming president, and I was like really feeling the like pull and everyone unfriending each other, and I was like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? And so went into meditation, and I got this vision of a big pile of shit. Big pile of shit. Like the one that fell on Biff in Back to the Future, right?
Oh,
it was
yeah.
funny. And then that pile of shit broke down, and it got watered, and it got, churned, and then it started to grow. And I was like, oh, after the meditation, I was like, okay, that seems like it must be, there's a lot of shit coming, and out of the shit, it's going to break down some systems, and it's going to shift and change. And then all of a sudden it's going to grow, and we're going to have a new beginning. So, I was able to kind of deal with a lot of that empathetic stress. Yeah. And I'm still not 100% on board with the guy, but I can kind of see where everything is happening for a reason. And maybe it could be that he's in place for some great reasons. So
some greater good. I mean, it would be really nice for Tesla's memory if some of his technology ended up being part of some grand scheme of how things got kind of like wrestled out of the hands of the worst of the millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire people or whatever, we're out of the controllers. Because I mean, Trump's still part of that club, but who's to say he's not trying the best he can to help? I don't know. I'm never going to claim that, but I'm not opposed to it being reality.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Alan?
Yeah.
I wanted to actually read something I thought might be interesting, going back to what was being said about his love of pigeons, if I could.
Yes.
He said, I have been feeding pigeons, thousands of them for years, thousands of them. But there was one pigeon, a beautiful bird, pure white with light gray tips on its wings. That one was different. It was a female. I would know that pigeon anywhere. No matter where I was, that pigeon would find me. When I wanted her, I had only to wish and call her, and she would come flying to me. She understood me, and I understood her. I loved that pigeon. I loved her as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose in life.
It is beautiful. As a little bird.
Yeah. Birds are so smart. I mean, you've met my chicken. I have this one chicken that just absolutely loves me and will come running to me. Will try to jump in my car. It's amazing. This chicken is amazing. And we have other birds that are like that too. And so I can totally see that, and especially pigeons, because I mean, how intelligent they are with being able to fly long distances and carry messages before there was any kind of radio transcribing or anything like that. And so it's really, that was probably another one of his fascinations also is their homing mechanism and their intelligence, being an intelligent person himself, being fascinated with frequency and energy and the universe and how it all worked together.
It is interesting too that birds are like the messengers of the gods and cultures throughout the world, throughout time. And then he gets his little pigeon friend.
Yeah.
I love that story. All right. So past the time traveling Trump story, what do you guys think about this resurgence we've had in modern time of Tesla and interest in Tesla? Because one of my questions actually before we get to this is like, why do we even know about Tesla? If they tried so hard to discredit him and destroy him and keep him from being successful, like why weren't they able to just completely delete him from history, especially if he's dying in ignominy or whatever?
Yeah, it's just like how they do with anyone, that they don't want you to have, or don't want their information to get out. They need to discredit you, and then they can erase you away and write in somebody else's name. So just like the reference earlier with Columbus, he didn't discover America. He didn't discover anything. There was already people here, and the story isn't correct. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of global information, share between different countries, between different walks of life, and kind of see the bigger picture. And then the truth really comes out and the truth prevails.
I think, yeah. So I think like they kind of tried to, but then it still trickled out somehow. So now we have people who are somewhat interested in Tesla enough that we have them in films like The Prestige, you know, more as like a trick than anything, more as like oh, here's how this magician would do this trick, is because they knew Tesla or whatever. But he's in there. And then we've got the Tesla car company, and we have someone with our eyes open on-site reporter Brett went and got a little video of the Tesla tower they're building down in Texas somewhere. So we've kind of got this like resurgence in all of this Tesla intrigue.
Well, I think it also goes to, no matter how hard they try to rewrite and recreate reality for their own method, it just doesn't work with beings whose spirit bubbles to the surface for certain ones who find the discontent in the contrived societies we live in. And when they begin to resonate with really being themselves, like Tesla, a receiver of the Akashic records, they then seek out others who also resonate, and in the process begin to realize who their deeper brothers and sisters are in the, shall we say, field and ether, who are there, were there, are still there, really. And they then start networking with others, and it just begins to surface slow but surely. And then you get groups like this that form around the concept of using this technology kind of in the opposite way it was intended by the government, who really created the beginnings of the web, which was the dark web, which is what it is now for information storage, but not good information. The perverse they need to keep in the dark, because it's too ugly for the light. And then so I think people like Tesla are going to find more ways into the history book, shall we say, but it's very slow and very piecemealed, and really you have to wait till people stumble on what's out there, because giving it to people, good luck. You know? I mean, it's like we've talked about before, when getting into dealing with people and wanting to help them, but after a while you're like, all right, well, banging my head was useless. I mean, even though the movies portray this idea like, oh, you know, man, I'm going to bring the knowledge to the masses and everything's going to change and it's going to be cool. And like, no, it's not a TV miniseries and things aren't going to be okay. There's a reason we're in the position we are for, well, multiple generations of human beings and thousands of years. It's not just going to be fixed overnight, you know, like getting in relationships with other people. You might have this idea like, oh, I can change them. No, probably not. Even though you're willing to love the person, if they've been broke for 20, 30, 40 years, it might be nice to give them the opportunity, but it's not like Hallmark. So it might be for some people, but, you know, it's the rare stories. You can't base reality on that, you know. I mean, I'm miraculously healed. All right, well, the rest of us kind of got to work on. There's a reason you even say I'm miraculously healed, because it doesn't normally happen.
It is a miracle. It's rare.
Right.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's suppressed, and then it's not in high school textbooks. Like Brett, I think, said that in the chat just now. I never learned about Tesla in high school. Definitely learned about Edison. And then, like you're saying too, though, you can't just go give people that information. Like I have this printout on the wall of my classroom that's it's AC versus DC. It's Tesla versus Edison, and it kind of like lays out, it's like an infographic, and it lays out all this information about both of them. And if you take the time to look at it, you have to come to the conclusion that Edison is a piece of shit, Tesla is badass. And then why would you never have learned about Tesla? But I've had it on my wall of my classroom for 5 or 6 years, and I've had literally only one student ever even look at it. And
Sure.
that student was just like, huh, and walked away. And I was like, damn it. Like nobody, you really can't force people to care or know about something that they don't care about.
Right. And you're at the hub of the education. Sorry for air quoting.
No,
So,
education system is right. It's not educating anyone.
Unless you're homeschooling, I mean, it's very difficult from day one to instill the idea of let's look at the bigger picture and how it's all incorporated. No, okay, Johnny, we're going to study American history, but we're going to get Howard Zinn's book on it. We're not going to get the normal textbook on American history. We're going to get that other book, The Lies My Teacher Told Me in History Class. Right.
I have that book in my classroom too, and no one looks at it.
Right. Right. Well, they're programmed to not to.
They're programmed to literally not care about anything.
Right. I mean, pretty much the education system is a bunch of magicians. Don't, look at this hand over here so you don't see what the one off to the side's actually doing, pulling the trick on you.
And you're trained into this, like, I don't know, this like resistance to authority, which involves a resistance to doing any work or creativity at all, because that is somehow tied in with your idea of authority. And it's like, it's very self-defeating. But I bet money that all three of Harmony's children know exactly who Tesla is. Oh, I don't know if Harmony's with us anymore.
What's up?
Harmony?
Yeah, they knew what's up. I'm glitching out a little bit here again, but yeah, I think you said about my children and knowing what real history is. So
yeah,
they do. Definitely.
I said, I bet money that they know who Tesla is.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I also wonder what you guys think about Tesla, the car company.
About what?
What do you guys think about Tesla, the Elon Musk's car company?
Oh, the company. Yeah. I think they're ripping off that have been here 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not doing.
Oh, you cut out.
And I don't think Tesla would be very happy about what Elon Musk is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people think about it too much, but electric cars are pretty horrid for the environment themselves. Like those batteries that they run off of are possibly more destructive than burning fossil fuels. It's definitely arguable at the very least. If they're not worse, they're still really bad, but they're sold as this like magic fix-all for everything. And then what I noticed, so like earlier today, I was like eating right before the show and I was like, oh, I'll just watch a little Tesla thing just for fun right before the show. And I went to search for a Tesla on YouTube and I never even found a Tesla video because when I typed in Tesla, it's just hordes of videos about Elon Musk and the cars. And like, so now you have to know Nikola Tesla. You have to know his name, type it in full. And I swear to God, not that long ago, you could type in Tesla and it would all be Tesla, the scientist related content. And now it's just related to the car. So the idea has been brought up before. And I kind of wonder if it's true that the whole reason that they made this company and put it forth is to bury, in the information overload of the internet, any references to actual Tesla.
Gosh, it's almost like Google or Yahoo are forcing internet searches.
Yes, it's almost like they control all the results you get when you search for things.
Yeah. Jesus, China is just so repressive in their information filtering. Okay.
Yeah, true. We're exactly there. I mean, I notice it more and more daily that when you go do searches on Google, you just get straight shit, all propaganda and all geared towards a certain agenda and not actual results.
Well, the thing that I found just really eerie is... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Armin.
Maybe not.
Go ahead.
Oh, what I found so weird when it used to be that my first and last name were unique in the whole world. No one in existence ever had it until just a year or two ago. Some talentless DJ decided to take my first and last name. Now the only thing that keeps it unique is my middle name, and that's it. So now people are even recycling incredibly unique names now on the internet by just searching to find like a unique name that no one else is using, like mine, and now they adopt it as a stage persona. I don't know if I should be like, like, what's the word?
Flattered.
Yeah, thank you. Flattered or not, or like
Right.
disgusted. My luck, he's going to do something like, I don't know, shoot up a school of kids,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to start getting trolled by like some new group like Mothers Against School Shooters, like mass. Or,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, this is maybe related, not, I don't know. So my pen name is Corey Sharman. It's Quorri Sharman. And for a while that was definitely like, you could find me very easily because it's a very unique, made up nonsense word of a name. And then all of a sudden this site or company called Quora came out, and they're Quora. And right after that, I mean, I don't know where they came from or even what. It's like some sort of like Google Answers or Yahoo Answers or something, or Ask Yahoo. It's some sort of thing like that where you can like get information from them. But if you typed in Corey Sharman after that, it would just come up with Quora. And I was like, well, that's not even the same word. It's like slightly similar, and that's it. And now you can't find me. You can only find this Quora thing. And I don't think that's special and that they were like trying to like target me, but it's just they definitely bury what they don't care about and promote what they want you to see, even if it's not like the search word that you were using. But anywho, what types of projects do you guys see in the world right now that give you some kind of hope or make you feel like scientists are kind of on the same line as where Tesla was headed? Or do you see any?
Well, I find it fascinating that we're speaking long distances with video and an audio right now, because that was a prediction that Tesla had a long time ago. He spoke about this technology we're using right now. And so it's pretty amazing that we're able to this conversation, but to record it and then broadcast it for people to experience later on. Definitely one of Tesla's technologies that's being implemented now. There are just so many, the solar, the wind, the electric chair, remote control, wireless radios, x-rays, the light bulb. I really want to get some like light bulbs that you can light up. What some of those like he had. Turbine engines, definitely alternating current is, changed the face of the world. And the speedometer, electric, neon fluorescent lighting, all that stuff. So, I mean, if he is real, which who knows?
Yeah.
But if he is real, we have to do to a brilliant mind that was not afraid of the forces and the powers that were, and what really wanted to help for humanitarian reason. Definitely need to be thankful for everything that we have that is related to technologies and research he decided to put down on paper and patent and share with the world.
Nice. What do you think, Alan?
I kind of, not because I like being a contrarian, but I kind of, I look at my hopes and my thoughts of what he, I guess I look at what I'm hoping people enact and are drawn towards are his humanistic views of the interconnectedness of beings, not only us, but them out there, and connecting more to the wider universal mind, and not so much just being trapped within ourselves, but very much disciplining ourselves more, going inward to find everything outward, becoming friends of the pigeons and chickens, controlling our diets a lot more, and leading lives that are more oriented towards service. So I really hope we implement those things about him, and not so much the kind of cyborg-esque version that I think a lot of society wants to go to, because they don't understand the infinity of us and them and the universal consciousness. They think it's only this body, and they don't understand the deeper electrical, magnetic, spiritual, ether,
Yeah.
prana, the things that he did understand, but just most people only view it in, oh, we created this device. Well, the device is a reflection of something bigger. That's what you should be worried about. The device is cool and
Yeah.
such, but yeah, we, sorry, weird noise outside my window.
It's a pigeon.
No, it was kind of kind of like a howling and a crying at the same time. So that just kind of sends up warning signals of like a hurt child. But yeah, I kind of like hope that people move towards that aspect of it, and they kind of implement his ideas about humanity and being just better, more understanding people looking within themselves. And I personally view that as a kind of technology, but
Yeah.
just even greater than the machinations created by steel and wires and stuff, which really just harness what our bodies can do anyways.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, when we're in this flesh or we're out of it, because this flesh is just another one of the things he was creating, because he also got into robotics too. So I think even he was looking into that, and also the fact of these creations, they're coming from the place that all of us can tap into. And the things that he created, as Harmony was talking about, with talking on these devices and phones and computers, back in 8th century Tibet, Padmasambhava, who came from the Pakistani valley into Tibet, wrote in his prophecies that people in the future, in a couple thousand years, will be in their houses and will be using things that resemble reflective mirrors, and will be able to look at libraries around the world and won't have to actually travel there to see them. So he too was polling from the same spot all of them have been polling from. So we're just seeing these individuals rise to the surface and are separated from the milk and the water, and they take on their manifestation with us to give us these devices and means to better ourselves. And I think I really hope, like with what everything that he did, we all look to embody everything that was about him as and his humanity. Don't idolize him, don't dehumanize him as this almost caricature. Look at what happened to him when he, in the last days of his life, just forlorn, dying, malnourished because he had no money for food, and just everybody used him up. But all these scum that used him up were all using what he gave us. So even though we suffered in the end, like a lot of, I don't even want to use the term martyrs, but people that sacrificed themselves for the betterment of all beings, we see that coming about in a variety of people, like in these podcasts, trying to get it out there for the public to learn from it, that they randomly stumble on to the Rogue Ways and Eyes Open group,
I love that, because I really am a firm believer that, technology is a valuable tool that we're using right now, but that at the core of things, like, we're capable of way more than we tend to even realize, let alone try to practice to get towards. And I just think that some of this technology disables us from following those paths. So it's almost like it's a disservice to us, because I do think, some of these ancient I guess like monks or sages or wise people or whatever, like they could bilocate and they could, like you were saying, Alan, like see the future or tap into these things. And it's like, I really just don't think we even need the devices to do these things. I think that we could do it ourselves.
Absolutely. I think they're like a transition to like show us what is possible,
Yeah.
you know, because our minds have been so conditioned to think that we can't. And what Alan was saying and what you just said, it reminds me of one of my favorite Nikola Tesla quotes. And he said, the day that science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than all the previous centuries of existence.
Ooh,
That's
yeah,
non-physical phenomena. It's exactly what you were talking about. You know, it's goes much far beyond that. And it's like his other quotes about frequency, energy, and vibration. He says, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency. And it goes much beyond the tangible, the physical, the little doodads and things like that. And that's definitely, I think, Tesla's main point was that we are empowered beings and that we all have that intrinsic power.
I love that. And I hope that the Hegelian dialectic works in like a positive way with this, because we've gone so far towards this reliance on the physical, and our scientism, our cult of science is so hyper focused on the material that they ignore anything that doesn't fall within their expectations of how physical reality should behave. And it'd be cool if we then like snap back the other way and go towards this non-physical reality that exists that we just ignore and don't connect with.
Right, and one of the big problems with the was it you, Lindsay, that said the religion, the science, religion of science?
Yeah.
They're like the Buddha in his time. They were called the materialist or the nihilist. He didn't separate the two.
Oh, wow.
Because the one of the modern teachers, the first American to be ordained in the Tibetan tradition by the Dalai Lama himself, Robert Thurman, Uma Thurman's father, he used to make fun all the time of the scientific departments at the college, the university he taught at in New York, because he was on the humanities department, the Tsongkhapa head department, and they would always, rip on him for being in the humanities, and he would always joke on them like, "Oh, so you guys believe everything that exists right now is all that we see, right? Right? You don't think there's anything beyond the flesh, so when we die, that's all there is, right? Right, right." He's like, "Well, who came back and told you that then?" And he said, we have all the people telling us, well, yeah, there's all this material that proves that there's something after. You're the ones who are going on blind faith. So which one of us is really religious?
True that. That's awesome. Well, this seems like a great place to wrap things up. What do you guys want to say as your final kind of words of wisdom to people listening, or thoughts that you want people to reflect on as we tie things up?
I'll throw out another quote from Nikola Tesla. The universe is a symphony of vibration and waves. We must avail ourselves to its energy. So we must not only come into understanding of energy, frequency, and vibration, but also avail ourselves to that energy and become in balance, because the natural forces are always in perfect balance. And when we align ourselves with natural forces, we become in balance. So balance is the key.
Awesome. Thank you.
I want to quote something he wrote about lifestyle and longevity. It's a long one, but I'm just going to just give a few pieces of it. Quite early in life, I set about disciplining myself, planning out a program of living for what I considered the most sane and worthwhile life. Since I love my work above all things, it is only natural I should wish to continue it until I die. I want no vacation, no surcease from my labors. If people would select a life work compatible with their temperaments, the sum total of happiness would be immeasurably increased in the world. Many are saddened and depressed by the brevity of life. What is the use of attempting to accomplishing anything, they say? Life is so short, we may never live to see the completion of the task. Well, people could prolong their lives considerably if they would but make the effort. Human beings do so many things that pave the way to an early grave. First of all, we eat too much, but this we have heard so often, and we eat the wrong kinds of foods and drink the wrong kinds of liquids. Most of the harm is done by overeating or under-exercising, which brings about toxic conditions in the body and make it impossible to throw off the accumulation of poison.
I love it. Bring it back to the practical.
Oh.
Awesome. Well, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your electric, very electric, concentric, analog dose of wisdom according to Harmony. Harmony, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. And thank you once again for another awesome road.
Awesome. And Alan, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for letting me join in. I appreciate it with my raspy voice.
Especially on short notice. And thank you, even though you have your voice. It sounded great, so you did well. The mysteries of time are steep and circuitous. Tesla is one of the icons from our past that can give us the most hope that there are minds who can break out of the deadlocked system of thought control to break through to realms as yet undiscovered. Realms that can offer true individual freedom through the understandings they lend. And perhaps he wasn't real. Perhaps his ideas were successfully thwarted and then stolen for misuse by the powers that be. Or perhaps Trump is a time-traveling buffoon who sent his son back to travel to inner Earth in the early 1800s Russia. But the truth is, we can't know for sure. What we can know is that the entirety of all that exists is more than we tend to explore, that there are mysteries yet to uncover, that our senses and minds are built to lead us toward their unveiling, and that we have everything it takes to carry on work that was lost to deceit or to pick it up in the first place if that's the case. So on your journeys to reach ever higher states of human beingness, just remember to travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Good night.